as we, and I think within the community. Today we are privileged to have panelists who have implemented these networks and would be willing to share more insight on the challenges that they've encountered and the benefits they've reaped out of that as well. I hope you can all hear me clearly. It's clear? It's audible?
Very clear.
Good, fantastic. Fantastic, good, that's good. So before we get into the webinar and into the digging deep, I would first like to introduce our panelists. Martin Kanyora, CTO at ChuiNet Limited. There's Philip Malala, he's a consultant with Sasa IT. There's Josephine Miliza, who will talk about Tunapanda as a community network. There's Irene Misoi, who will tell us more about Lanet Umoja network. There's Barack Otieno, who's also doing a community network in Siaya, and he will tell us how that is going on. They are members of the KeNOG program committee with me here to support this program and to make sure that it is a success. Before we go into the session, let me just give a brief highlight of how we will run this. We will have the first session where the panelists will give more detail on what they've been doing, and then we will dive into a second session where then we will do the Q&A, questions that had been shared by the community through a survey, and then we will have a Q&A session. Yeah, so before we start the first session where the panelists make very brief presentations, I'll hand over to Simon Mayoe to speak more about KeNOG as a community, what we are doing, and where we are going. So Simon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martha, and welcome all to this. I'll be projecting us 2 to 3 slides. You able to see?
Yeah.
Quick run through on what KeNOG is, especially for the newcomers. That is KeNOG. This is the background when we started as KeQuick. We have a couple of reports at KeNOG. If you want to go through previous reports on where we are coming from. But our goal is basically to enhance local technical capacity in the areas below, that is network operations, internet services, internet security, automation, storage and cloud services. Then there's a way that as community members, you can be able to contribute through your feedback with the help with the community so that we can improve how things are running. If you're an expert in one of those fields that I've just listed, it's good for you to volunteer because we normally offer slots to be able to have their presentations. Then all events are supported by sponsors. So if you can be able to support as a sponsor, you're welcome. Then you can reach the program committee members at pc@kenog.org. Then lastly, KeNOG becomes nog.ke. So we are changing our domain so that we can have a Kenyan face having the local domain. So welcome so much. The website will be live, but we have a list which will be shared at the end, or rather during on the chat on where our mailing list is for continued communication. Thank you so much for the webinar. Back to you, Martha.
All right, thank you, Simon, for that presentation. And we want to acknowledge KeNIC and in particular Joe Marwa for helping us acquire the nog.ke domain and remaining true to Kenya. Okay, so we will jump into the first session where the panelists will make presentations on their experiences, and I think it will be useful to all of us to pay attention and learn a couple of things from the slides. I'm sure questions will come up, and feel free to type the questions in the Q&A session, in the Q&A section of the Zoom, and the panelists will respond to you at the end of in the last session. Okay, so first I will introduce Martin Kanyora. Martin, he's an experienced wireless engineer with 8 years experience in the field. Martin serves as the CTO at ChuiNet Limited, which is a local WISP, and he's responsible for research, design, implementation of the company infrastructure from inception to date. So the questions that are coming up on how do you set up, what are the experiences, I think Martin is the guy who will answer those questions. He also has a lot of experience with Wi-Fi hotspot systems, such as MikroTik routing systems and switching systems as well. Martin, over to you.
All right, great. Good morning for those who are not in Kenya. Good afternoon, my fellow Kenyans. Good evening, if there's anybody who is out of state. My name is Martin Kanyora. I work for an ISP called ChuiNet Limited. I'm the head of infrastructure. I'm the guy who is in charge of the entire networking aspect. I don't do a little bit of marketing. I don't do so much of the nitty-gritties. I am in charge of the network 100%. I have been responsible for design and implementation of the entire wireless network from the word go to date. So while I am giving you my presentation, is also going to be part of the journey of ChuiNet, where we've come from, what we've done, what we have achieved, where we failed, and also where we succeeded. Just if we can just start from the word go, out of experience, when very many people who I know and most of those who I have consulted for started their WISPs either as a hobby or, you know, as a result of problems that, like myself, for example, I started as a result of problems I had with Africa Online at the time. It was about 10, 15 years back. And then I started telling to my neighbor, and then there was the next guy and the next guy, like that. Rarely do I find somebody who actually sat down and started their ISP from a 100% commercial perspective, where they say, okay, I have $1 million shillings too, and I think I'll go into this business. Very many people find themselves wisping along the way. I have consulted for people who are sharing for their neighbor next door, their neighbor across the road, like that, and they built businesses. However, very, very important for people to know, especially those of you who are who are starting up. Not us who we've been in the business for about 5+ years. We have a little bit of experience on some of the pitfalls, but if you're just starting, there are some things that you need to take into consideration. First and foremost, you have to appreciate that technology is very dynamic. It does not stick in one place. So if you want to begin to WISP, then you have to be ready to change, you know, on the fly, in real time. Things change day and night, and you have to be willing to change with them. Secondly, is that you have to have a little bit of networking background, sort of. You have to be able to establish the difference between a gigabit switch and a non-gigabit switch. You know, routers and their capabilities and what they do. At least you have to know how to configure a wireless router, a wireless access point, know how to do a little bit of IP addressing. Reason being that even if you employ technical personnel to do these things for you, you also need to have knowledge of your own, so that in case they mess up or there's a problem, sometimes there's an IP conflict, sometimes there's interference, all of you cannot be asking yourselves, what is the problem? You also have to be a part of your business. Please note that very many WISPs are personal businesses. They're things that we start out of passion and you want to excel. So you have to be your business and your business has to be you. I talked about market segmentation. You have to know who are you targeting. You cannot go to a very urban area that probably has 3, 4, 5 fiber cables and you want to squeeze yourself into that market. You have to create a niche for yourself. If you're not from the city and you're from a rural area, in Kenya especially, there are a lot of ISPs who are operating from outside Nairobi, despite the fact that most of us are in the city. But so many guys are out there. You can say, okay, I'll do for my town only, I'll do for my county, I'll do for my village. You have to have done some sort of a background check and know, is this a good market? Is it sustainable? Is there affordability? Because again, if you go to a very remote area or an area that is very sparsely populated, then you might have a problem getting enough numbers for your business to make sense. So market research is something that you need to have done while you're getting into the business. And then again, you also have to determine the infrastructure or the technology that you're going to deploy. The reason why I'm saying that is because, like most of you know, there are a lot of manufacturers in the market today. There's a lot of gear out there. There are 1,001 manufacturers, and you have to know, what am I comfortable with? Some people have problems with MikroTik. Some people have problems with Cisco. Some people think that Juniper is the most complex thing in the whole world. And my advice is that you start with what you're comfortable with, and then as time goes by, try and grow out of it into something better, so that your network can also be stable, and things like that. When it comes to things like wireless gear, for example, in our company, we have changed our wireless equipment 3 times since we started. And as I said when I was beginning, this is a very dynamic industry. Whatever is working today might not be relevant tomorrow. You might have invested hundreds of millions in an infrastructure today. And I'm sure you've seen it in even in some of the big telcos like Safaricom, like MTN. A long time ago, they were with Siemens, they were with Nokia, now they are with Huawei. And tomorrow, if there's a better technology, they'll change and move there. So you have to also take into consideration that the technology you're using today, despite the fact that it's good for you, it's working for you, you're comfortable, it might change tomorrow, and you'll find that it is obsolete tomorrow. So you have to design and place your mind in a manner that if things change overnight, you will change overnight. And then just finally, just to wrap up, there's something called a growth strategy, where you know where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow. When I started, and me and some of the guys that we started with, we were only in the Nairobi CBD, and we were only concentrating on businesses in Nairobi CBD. It's important to note that I started doing WISP before there was fiber. I was already selling internet. The first cable that started running in the Nairobi CBD was the Access Kenya cable. Immediately after they did their IPO, I had just started WISPing at the time. So at that time, you know, we only thought that we would be in the CBD forever. And those of you who are from Kenya know how the Nairobi CBD is today. It is a maze of fiber cables. It is a maze of wireless devices. It is just crazy. You have to be able to adapt to that change and know that if I am starting here today, chances are high I'm not going to be here in the next 2-3 years. You have to know that I need to grow. Once I have connected my first 50, 100 clients in this region and it's probably drying up, I need to move on to the next. I need to start, you have to open up some of these markets, you open up for yourselves. We have to give credit to COVID-19 because it has brought a lot of awareness on internet connectivity, but we cannot just sit and say there'll be another pandemic tomorrow that is going to even make people want more and more of internet. Chances are high that what you're going to experience from now moving forward is competition, as opposed to a pandemic. We don't want to anticipate another one. So if you are in a particular region today and your analysis tells you that you've kind of exhausted the clientele, it's time to move. You have to always have that growth mentality at the back of your mind. Don't stick in one place, keep moving, connect the next mile and the next mile. I know that wireless technology is known as the last mile solution, but it is the mile after the last mile that will keep your WISP alive. Thus, I don't want to waste so much time. Now that I am the first guy, I might feel like I want to say so much. Anybody who wants to ask me questions, I'm here. I'm more than willing to answer. And that's all I have for you. Any other technical information that you want in the Q&A, I'll answer you. You can also get in touch with me from my other contacts. I think I'll have a place to just share them there at the chat, and then we can get together and grow the industry. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. So what I've heard from your presentation is, there's a why, there's a reason why you went out and saw the need to establish a WISP. There was a niche that you looked at. There's market research that had to be done. There's a question of sustainability, yeah? And I think as we go into the discussion, we will bring these issues out further and just help the community to be able to dissect and make good judgments before WISPing, yeah? So thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, so we will move to Irene Misoi, and Irene will be talking about community networks. I think it will help us tell the difference between a WISP and a community network. And it will also set a good basis for us to engage in the second session, where we discuss sustainability on the two networks. So briefly, let me introduce Irene Misoi. Irene is an Open Internet Engineering Mozilla Fellow 2019-2020, embedded with the ISOC, where she is engaged in a project that aims to bring connectivity to unconnected communities in Nakuru, the rural areas of Nakuru. And Irene is also active through AHERI, in which AHERI has a partnership with USAID and ISOC. Irene is keen on building community networks, and in particular, where she's doing that is in Lanet, Umoja, to be able to provide affordable internet. Irene, please walk us through and help us understand what community networks are and how you go about providing affordable internet.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. I hope you can be able to see my presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, my name is Irene, as have been introduced, and a member of AHERI, and currently a Mozilla Fellow. I'll talk about, first of all, the organization that the community network started out on, which is AHERI. And AHERI is it's a Pan-African organization that builds capacity for women in ICT or in STEM. And it's a network of women in technology who consider gender diversity in computer science and ICT industry. We are also involved in mentoring girls, both in the university and in secondary schools. And we thought of, dropping down to the secondary school so that we realize there is need for career guidance, for people to just get to understand what it entails getting into ICT. So we always have a mentorship program that we run every year, and we invite girls from secondary schools to just come and get to know the various careers that in ICT. Then, of course, we did apply for a grant that had been advertised through USAID that was called Women Connect. And when we did apply, we were lucky to get the grant. And therefore, the grant was to implement community networks where we are connecting the unconnected in 4 African countries. AFCHICs exist in several African countries. So we were to do the project in 4 countries, Kenya, Namibia, Senegal, and Morocco. So I'll talk about the Kenyan project. Lanet Umoja is a community network that started off in 2018, of course, through the funding from USAID. Now, but majorly the funding from USAID was majorly for trainings, sensitizing the communities around. And it was specifically like, to provide connectivity to women in the rural communities. So as we were looking out, where to implement this project, we started looking around. We approached a few people. We were to do it in Kajiado, but it was difficult to just get somebody who can hold our hand and get to work with us. And this is in terms of the government, the government officials or leaders in Kajiado. So finally, one of us, I think, had met Chief Kariuki. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about him. He's a chief, he's called a chief who tweets, and he's somebody who's embraced technology. So when we spoke to Chief Kariuki, he was excited and he embraced the whole idea. And therefore we embarked on going to start the community network. So of course we had to have a few meetings with the community so that he could tell them what we were about to do, which is very important because you cannot just go into some community and start setting up things and they are not aware. So it's very, very important. So we normally call Chief Kariuki our local champion because whenever we had to have meetings, then he's the one who calls for the meetings. Because of course, we are not known in the community. So of course we had a few meetings and then we started working on the project. Again, we had to look for an ISP to get bandwidth from. And when we looked around, of course, a lot of them, their bandwidth is very expensive. So we thought of looking for a partner who could, at least give us, bandwidth that is affordable, affordable, slightly cheaper than what the rest are offering. So there is a Kenya Educational Network. This is an organization that provides internet connectivity to learning institutions. And this was set up specifically to do that so that they can, buy bandwidth in bulk for the learning institutions at a cheaper rate. So when we spoke to the CEO, he embraced the whole idea, and he actually told us that they had been trying to connect schools. So the few they connected, there was a problem. They connect the schools, but thereafter they are not able to pay for the bandwidth in the schools. Now, and our model was we connect the schools, the public schools around the community. Then using the schools now, we can be able to share the connectivity with the neighbors, or rather the community that lives around the schools. So KeNOG accepted to do that with us. Of course, and KeNOG has a vast network because of connecting all the universities around the country. At least it's like there's a university in every county. So and then of course they are in partnership with a lot of the ISPs, so they are able to connect us very easily. So the first, our backhaul, of course, that we built was connecting. KeNOG was using telecom to connect us. So we did the backhaul, and then of course we were able to just connect 2 schools. Yeah, 2 schools. But unfortunately, the backhaul had issues, and by then I think telecom was going through some transitions, the merger, and it really became impossible working with them. So we had to go back to KeNOG and tell them what was happening. So we had to redo the connectivity again, the backhaul through one of the universities, Njoro, Egerton in Njoro. So that is where our backhaul currently is. So it's like we had to redo the work afresh so that we can get the backhaul. So of course, before doing that, there is a site surveys that you have to do so that you can be able to know the landscape and how you're going to get connected, and know where you're going to position your equipment. And so far, we have already connected 7 schools and the chief's camp. That is according to that diagram. Then we've had a lot of meetings and trainings within the community. Now, one of the things we did was to be able to, one of the sustainability aspects, because we needed continuity and support for the community network. We came up with an idea that we need to identify the youth. There are so many youth that are unemployed within the community who've done computer science, IT, diplomas, degrees, and they are jobless. So we took them in and did a training. So the first training was online. There's a training that is offered by Internet Society, ISOC, an online community network training. That was trained by, the training was conducted by one of the panelists, Josephine, and of course, and Kevin. So we did train them. Thereafter, we had to do some hands-on trainings to just familiarize the youth with the devices and all that. So some of those photos just represent some of the activities that we did. We had meetings with some of the women groups. This is so that, we were training them so that when the internet comes, then they can be able to utilize the internet. Some of them are entrepreneurs and all. And it was very interesting that after the internet connections came in, some people actually, there's one lady who used the internet to create a business for herself. She makes flower pots and sells them as part of her side hustle. She's one of an employee in one of the schools that we have connected. Then, of course, managing the community network itself, we have several things. We had to come up with a billing system. Now, because you have to, apart from connecting the community, of course, some of the sustainability plans that we put in place is for the community network itself to sustain itself. So, and of course, this will come about from the payments that are being made by the community members. So we had to come up with a billing system. Now we've put in place a billing system called Ion Wi-Fi that we custom made it, integrated with the M-Pesa system. So it's very easy to use it. you just need to make a payment. Once you make a payment, depending on your payment plan, we have 3 different payment plans: 200 shillings per month. Then we have 50 shillings for 2 weeks. And then we have 10 shillings for, no, not 10, yeah. No, 200, 100, and then 50 shillings for a week. Now, once you get the code, then you're able to access the community network by just using the code to access the, the Wi-Fi. Now, the kind of equipment we are using eGenius, and it comes with a monitoring tool or a remote management tool. So that is normally a bit easy for us to be able to monitor what's happening at the community network from where we are, because we are based in Nairobi, a lot of us, and of course the community network is back in Nakuru. So the EASE master is what manages the community network. You can be able to view all the equipment that is online, and in case there are any problems, then you can be able to resolve them from there. Then of course, the achievements, we've been able to connect 7 schools, 4 secondary schools, 3 primary schools, and the chief's camp. We've also trained the youth and the women in the community. And then we've been able to install a billing system to be able to manage the community network. The community network had to, register itself as an organized group, so that we could be able to do that, open an account. And then of course, the M-Pesa system is linked to the payment so that the money can go into the account. This is because of transparency. It's very important, when it comes to money, it becomes a very big issue. So there's need for a lot of transparency for it. Just know how much is coming in and all that. And then of course, once that has happened, then they can be able to know what to do with the money, probably extend the network and so on. Our future plans, we hope to extend this to the private schools. We started off with the public schools first, and then we are thinking of connecting the private schools also around the community. Then the other thing we are thinking of is replicating the model in other parts of the country, where there is need for to connect the community there. So that is what I have for today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Irene, for that presentation. I think you have brought out the question on sustainability, and also indicating how important it is to partner, to form partnerships, if it is with the government and other entities that would help you engage the community better and give value, and also the question of cost management. So those are items that we will discuss further in the second session. Without further ado, let me welcome Barak Otieno to make the third presentation so that we are able to keep time. Barak is, I think we most of us have engaged with Barak. He's a director at AHERI. AHERI is Africa Higher Education Research Institute, which runs AHERI community networks, and these networks are established in, they have digital villages and hotspots at Akala Community Center and Ngia Community Center, which are both in Siaya County. AHERI also has established a laboratory and a hotspot at Omuga Polytechnic in Kabondo, serving about 250 students and teachers from the local community. And in the last 2 months, AHERI has also deployed infrastructure in Nyalenda, Kisumu, which intends to serve the Nyalenda Informal Settlement Scheme and the adjoining communities. At the moment, AHERI is extending coverage to Obunga Informal Settlement and other social amenities under the county government. Barak, over to you. Please expound more on what AHERI is doing and how quickly you're moving and where you're going. Over to
Thank
you.
you thank you very much, Martha. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends from wherever you are watching us from. I've seen we are in out of the world. As Martha has said, I'm a director at Africa Higher Education Research. I have prepared a few slides, but as possible. So to the next slide. So Africa Higher Education Research Institute, next slide, Kevin, started as an initiative under an organization known as Community Initiative Support Services, which is one of the oldest public interest organizations operating in Western Kenya. It has been in existence for over 30 years, working in communities, and its mission statement being to actively participate in the creation of a just and healthy society by building and sustaining sustainable individuals. So Africa Higher Education Research Institute started off as a project under CIS, but it has since grown into its own organization. Largely what Africa Higher Education Research Institute does is to host annual conferences that seek to promote the use of technology in higher education. How AHERI community network came was as a result of a paper that was presented in our conference last year, which focused on community networks, and we saw that there was need for community networks in Western Kenya to just facilitate the connection of the unserved and underserved, especially deep in the rural areas. So that is how we arrived at the idea or the decision to start the AHERI Digital Villages and Community Network project. I must say at this point that we have learned a lot from the forerunners, that is Lanet Community Network and TunapandaNET, which has helped us just in ensuring that our community network comes up to speed and we are able to the community. Current center, community ports and digital villages. We have one at Akala, where Initiative Support Services has a community center. We are largely building on the network that was already established by the organization. I can see that my network is breaking.
Yes.
Okay, I can proceed.
Okay.
Thank you. So basically, what I was saying is Community Initiative Support Services has community center. One's at Akala, which is an innovation center where community members come to learn and for various meetings that basically build their skills in different areas. There's also a community center at a place called Nia, and there's also an office and community center at a place called Umoja in Mabdi County. At Umoja, we opted to put the community center at a local technical and vocational institute that is called Umoja Polytechnic, where we set up a lab for them and call center. Recently, just towards the end of COVID-19, we used the facility for a train-the-trainer program for lecturers or teachers who will be teaching, of course, using digital tools, local communities, and of course, institutions, the neighborhood and students are basically also access the internet. In Kisumu, as I mentioned earlier, we've been building infrastructure that is currently carrying Nyalea in Kumol settlement. We are carrying up to the shores of Lake Victoria at Dunga. and we are extending to informal settlement. With COVID-19, there's been a demand for the network services, basically because a number of students were using Zoom for purposes of learning or training. So we saw a demand on our infrastructure to provide connectivity to even homes that are sent to the informal settlement. Of course, we are extending our coverage within Kisumu City and Kisumu County because we are working in partnership again with the county government. And so our next phase would be to connect or to provide last mile connectivity, if I may borrow the
Barak, it seems like we're losing you. Barak?
Our mother institution, or rather our host institution, Community Initiative Support Services, which has already been working in the community and has gained a lot of experience working and solving challenges in the community. We also got support from the Basic Internet Foundation, which is a partner organization that we are working with, which helped us with the initial equipment that we had on input from our 2019 annual conference. With respect to expansion, we've relied also on contribution from the directors. We have a director who is in charge of administration and finance. We have technology, which I am focusing on, and we also have a director that is in charge of the network. We also have a team that is all round, focused on admin, focused on network administration, installation, and support, and of course, community engagement as well. So I'll stop there for now, and then I'll come back to answer any questions as they arise during the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Barak, for that. I can see there are a lot of questions that are coming up in the Q&A section, and they're very good questions. Thank you to AHERI and Swale. We will pick that up at the end. But Irene, please feel free to engage on chat and provide clarity, but we will discuss them for everyone's benefit. Okay, I would like to introduce our fourth panelist to make a presentation again on community networks, and then I think it will give us a good basis also to see various community networks and how they've been set up. Our fourth panelist is Josephine Miliza, and let me just get that. Josephine is a network engineer and is very passionate about enabling communities in Africa so that we're able to leverage on digital technologies, and that way we make we have social economic empowerment. Josephine is the Africa Regional Coordinator of the APC Lanet project that is hosted by KeNOG. Josephine has been working on community networks since 2016, and she's a co-founder of TunapandaNET, a community network that is based in Kibera, Nairobi. And this specific community network focuses on promoting access, adoption of digital technologies and ICT capabilities for the local community. Josephine has interests in bringing about development, specifically bottom-up sustainability, connectivity models, and introducing creative approaches that foster entrepreneurship and innovation, especially for youth and women in Africa. So Josephine, maybe you will speak to us a little bit more on how you came about to establish TunapandaNET and how you're creating the empowerment for women and youth in Africa. Over to you, Josephine.
Yeah.
Great.
I struggle. Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Josephine, as introduced, and as I represent two organizations today, the Association of Progressive Communications, LockNet project. In full, it is the Local Access Networks project, and I'm hosted by KeNOG, as well as Tunapanda Institute, where I work as the lead for TunapandaNET project, but also was involved in the early stages of the network, and hence the title co-founder. Thank you from panelists who shared a bit about community network. I think they've been able to shed the light, especially for those who are new to this concept. And just to add to what has already been said is that community networks and WISPs, I would like to think they fall into the same category, in a sense that they are both trying to provide access, especially last mile access, to communities or neighborhoods or municipalities. And so under that category, maybe the differentiating factor is that whereas the WISPs, commercial, community networks fall under the category of social purpose operators. And there are different models of community networks as well, because as we know, each community is different, but at the core of the community network is the aspect around community engagement, community ownership of the network, because the community gets to decide the direction of the network, the content that is hosted on the network, or the services also that are provided on the network. So our journey for TunapandaNET, I would say it started in 2015. That is when we conceptualized the idea of the network. And we just started off as thinking around how can we be able to enable our community to get access to educational content. So TunapandaNET was born in Tunapanda, which is a community-based organization that is located in Kibera and offers training in tech, design, and business. So one of the challenges the organization was having was that receiving so many applications, then it's able to handle. So we have a center in Olympic Estate in Kibera, but we are only able to accommodate around 30. So based on the number of applications that we receive, we really get to turn out quite a number of people. So the whole journey of TunapandaNET started just with thinking around how can we be able to enable even those who might not be able to get into our program to be able to still have access to educational content. So we try to address this in two ways. First, we were building, digitizing content and thinking about offline educational platforms. And then secondly, we were now thinking about the idea of a wireless network. So we did a video, shared it, and we got people who were interested, and they donated our first equipment. So the picture that you can see here is us. This was in 2016, together with my colleagues, and we were just now testing out the equipment to see the feasibility. So it was great. It has been a great learning experience. But as the topic says, the journey is often a difficult process. We didn't hit the ground running as we had anticipated, because one of the challenges we had was that whereas I'm a network engineer, my background was really in enterprise networks. I wasn't really familiar with Ubiquity type of equipment, Microti type of equipment. So this was my first go at it. And then for the rest of the team, they also didn't have, not just like, they didn't have a background in networking. So the initial steps included that I first trained myself on this equipment, then transfer the knowledge to the team so that we can be able to set up. But eventually we were able to try it, and it worked. So we had the offline equipment, offline content, just connecting two centers, but around the center, people living around it could be able to access. And we started experiencing challenges that we didn't anticipate, in that the fact that the community or the people did not know the network existed. And so that started a huge learning process for us around how do we design networks for the community by the community. And so our thinking shifted from just thinking around the core component of the network being the infrastructure to the people who we are actually trying to connect. And so we realized that in areas that, especially like underprivileged areas or economically disadvantaged areas, such as the areas where Irene, Baraka are working, as well as Kibera, we are at least a bit advantaged than rural communities. But at the core of it is that internet is still a luxury, and so we are still connecting people who we have to convince why they are getting connected. And so our process started with sensitization, and then thinking around connecting the whole of Kibera is really huge. So how do we now start to, what resources do we have, and how do we appropriate those resources? So with that, because we're educational focused, that was our easy, low-hanging fruit. And around that time, we were introduced to the community of community networks, where we had the first Community Network Summit. I think it was in 2017 in Nairobi, that brought together community networks from Africa. And for us, I think for me, that was when the bulb went on, because all along we were trying to do this, but we didn't have a name for it. So even in trying to find out information, it was quite challenging. Around that time, there wasn't really much on ubiquity equipment, on configuration. So for us, the introduction of the community of community networks was really, really helpful, because we were able to meet people who were actually doing almost a similar thing. So 2018 was actually when, 2017 was when we did our first pilot. We connected 5 schools and we were funded by the Internet Society, who still remain one of our greatest supporters for the network. And then 2018, 2020, we were supported by the Internet Society through the Kenya chapter now to scale the network. So the core things that we do to provide, or that we have felt are really needed by the community, of course, is the connectivity infrastructure. But our focus mainly is on community-based organization and community centers. So we target schools. We also target community health centers. We have youth spaces, incubators. So just sort of like organizations, or women centers as well, organizations that have a community focused. We feel that internet is still expensive for them. And if we are able to give them this, then they're able to leverage and increase on what they are doing. So just an example is that one of the youth centers that we connect is an art center. And through the network, through use of the internet, they get to regularly update and sell their merchandise online. The schools as well, Kibera has very few public schools. They really rely on community-based schools, and it's very challenging with the schools around the fact that they are under-resourced. So we hope that so through the community network and availability of locally relevant content and platforms, they can be able to access education content, as well as platforms that can help them. So just an example of one of the areas of impact in education has been the provision of training for teachers, internet for the schools, as well as the schools being able to access some virtual labs. Most of the schools actually that we connect, they don't even have a chemistry lab. So the time that the students get to interact with the equipment, with the equipment, if I can say, I think the equipment, but the first time they get in a lab is when they are doing KCSE. So you can imagine the type of divide or the disadvantage that they are going into. You're supposed to compete with people who have been holding burets since they were in Form 1, and for you, you're just starting to sit when you're when you get into the national examination. So this is a type of work that we really enjoy doing, and although it's not been an easy journey, we are still happy with the progress that we have been able to make. Then quickly I'll move into the impact that we have had. Whenever issues around connectivity or are spoken about, mostly the focus can be about the numbers or how many people that you have connected. But for us, we would like to look at impact differently. So in our community, for example, we find that even when people go online, especially youth, or the context is just that internet equals Facebook, internet equals YouTube, internet equals WhatsApp. And before COVID-19, not so many people knew the opportunities that were found online. So for us, our drive really is to look at impact. How does it impact the people who are using it economically, socially, politically? How are they able to improve their lives? And so we are hoping to now work towards building a local digital ecosystem, and this involves the connecting of schools, capacity building to ensure that people who are coming online have the skills to participate online, and they also know the danger so that they are safe online. We would also like our contribution to be around movement building, both in Kenya and regionally. We always enjoy sharing our experience of how we have grown or the challenges that we have faced and our learnings with other upcoming community networks. So that is a great focus for us. And then thirdly, we would like also to through our work to be able to build local, regional, and global partnerships and collaborations. Yeah, so and with that, maybe I can just say that through the support of organizations such as the Internet Society, Association of Progressive Communications, we have been able so far to connect 19 centers. We ended with 19 centers at the end of 2019. Someone said on the chat, COVID has been an enabler for us because last year, I remember we were literally begging teachers to teach them, to train them on digital literacy. Still the issue around like connectivity for schools was still like had to go and do like the door-to-door sort of mobilization. But with COVID-19, we are currently like overwhelmed with the requests that we have gotten to build a network. So we're seeing that we have received support from the Internet Society as well. And we are also partnering with MIT and a local organization in Kenya. And so by the end of the year, we will have a total of 30 centers, and this includes schools. We are also connecting community health centers. We're just getting into the community, sort of the youth public spaces. And then we are now looking also to have hotspots near homes so that the students can be able to access content, especially from home. So looking at the environment in which community network exists, we say like a flower, for it to bloom, it actually like depends on the soil in which it's planted. And so far, and not just speaking about community networks in Kenya, but also in Africa, is that they have existed despite of the environment, of the regulatory environment that exists. Until recently, the aspect of community networks was not really recognized or spoken about in policy and regulatory environments. And so there are quite a number of challenges that community network face. And one of them is the issue around licensing and access to spectrum. Spectrum fees are quite high. And so with that, we are advocating for consideration of license exemption, or at least reduce licensing fees, especially for community networks or social purpose network providers or operators. And then secondly, definitely establishment of financing, because financing has been still a challenge for us. Internet is still our major spend, despite the fact that we have a really good partner in KeNOG, similar to Irene. KeNOG are the ones who provide us the backhaul services, and despite the fact that KeNOG supports us, is still our major spend, and so just looking around how community networks can be financed would be great, especially looking at grants like the Universal Service Access Funds. Then thirdly is building an environment where we can have consortiums, or I would say like communities of practice, of people who want to start community networks or run community networks. In Africa, currently we have a WhatsApp group and a mailing list for community network operators, but we would also like to get this at national level. The more the merrier, I would say. There's still a huge number of people who are unconnected, and so we hope that we can be able to build this movement further. And then lastly is the establishment of interconnection points for rural and underserved communities, where community network operators can be able to access the national open access networks. And this year speaks back to the point around like internet costs are still very high. And if we are serving, it's not feasible to always transfer the cost to the user. And so where we have public utilities like the national open access networks, then we think that since community networks are focused on the community, then a bit more should be done to support them. So that ends my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions in the next round.
Thank you, Josephine. I was just about to rudely interrupt you on the time. Thank you for that. I think we will revisit some of the issues that you've brought up in the second session. Without further ado, allow me to welcome Philip Malala to make the final presentation. Philip is a consultant with 10 years experience in the ICT sector, and he has served in several capacities: technical support engineer, solutions architect, MD in a startup via ISP, and now he dedicates his time to helping organizations scale in technology integration and business development. Philip Malala, over to you. Please try and keep it to 5 minutes so that we are able to move on to the second session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. Again, I'm also quite happy to be part of this quite a great presentation. I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Just confirming. Okay, great. So yeah, I'm very passionate about connectivity, and I've had, I've been lucky to be introduced to all these technologies throughout my professional career. So and I thought that it would just be good as part of this to just talk about what are some of the key things that you need to look at when you are starting a WISP. Of course, a lot of the other panelists have already implemented key issues around building WISPs, but what I see is there's a lot of linkages that can be there, especially between WISPs and community networks, just because it's about having an impact, at a local level. So personally, very much from a telecom background, so worked first in a telecom company from technical support, went through into solutions design projects, then went more into the solutions side of things, where I worked with telecom providers, and this was largely in communications, so broadband wireless in 5 gig point-to-point multi-point links, and Wi-Fi networks. And then I had a shot to build what was not your typical WISP. It was more based on an FTTH setup. This is 2019 until about June 20, when I said, okay, I think I was guided more to this side of technical integration and business development, because there's a lot of opportunity around these areas. So the question is, once you've gone through the process of building a WISP or a community network, there's a lot of things that you go through, and at the end of the day, when you look back, I think it's almost cliche that we say that we need to plan, but I think that many of us always skip that step. It's always like, okay, yeah, I need to plan, then you don't plan. But yes, if you don't plan, then you're planning to fail. I think that is a key takeaway probably for me. And like Martin intimated, you need to start with the basics. I might be talking about this from a business perspective. I know the other guys have also talked about community networks, but either way, there's an element of sustainability. And for you to have that element of sustainability, market research is very key. Market research means you identify who your customers are. It means you identify what problems you're trying to solve. And then it means that you identify what opportunities that you can take advantage of. I was lucky in a way that someone mentioned to me that go and do the market research, but it's like I almost did it from the perspective of a technical person and not really from the perspective of is this sustainable? And sometimes we get lucky, but not always it is that you find that you have the right, you're addressing the right problems or the right issues, which is the reason why WISPs primarily exist. So you need to do a market survey. I'll go into a bit more of the business planning just in my next 2 slides. And then you need to have an operational plan. For me, I started from the ground up, and there was a lot of missteps. And sometimes probably thinking about this when you go back, if you do a proper market survey, you would find that maybe you can mitigate some of these things. Some of the issues that I kept experiencing was that, we didn't think about redundancy so well. Okay, we didn't think about probably the right technology to use. Initially, when I started, I was very much passionate about having a public Wi-Fi network, but then I realized that the challenges with doing a public Wi-Fi networks, especially in our circumstances where we have a lot of power problems, and you have like these nodes everywhere, that it became quite a huge challenge. And at some point, we decided to switch to an FTTH. So planning, it's very important. But at the end of it, you plan, you execute, but you need to go back to monitor and to report. And I'm just talking about it from a business perspective. Of course, the other guys have talked about it also from a technical perspective. What goes into, like most of the guys say that they start a WISP as a hobby. For me, I didn't start it as a hobby. We started it as a business, with for-profit goals, but we also had the view that there was an opportunity, there was a niche market that was not being addressed by the big guys. So once you have your light bulb moment, either that you want to have some impact, social, economic, or that you think that you're just taking advantage of some opportunities, then and then you go down and validate that. Okay, so there are lots of assumptions that you can have. You can say, okay, that internet services are quite expensive. Then you need to validate that that's true. And that's why you need to do a market research, because I've gone to places whereby people are offering internet services for 1,000 shillings. So, you just need to be able to cross-check that. And as you do that, then you need to also define, as you know who your market is and what issues or what problems you're trying to solve in the market, you need to define your product in a way that it will address those issues. So typically, I think in engineering, we say the problems that are there are either speed or cost or quality. I see a lot of times people say, pick any two. Okay, so are you able to either solve the question of speed? Speed can be issues to do with time to install. It can be issues to do with just basic access. For some people, they really don't have, and that is why we have community networks. And in some places, maybe you're going in there and there's incumbents, there's already other players in the market, then probably you need to do a SWOT analysis whereby you look at what strengths do you have. Maybe you have local capabilities, knowledge of the environment. Then look at what are your weaknesses so that maybe you downplay those, and what opportunities will you take advantage of with regards to your competitor. And then you should be able then to craft, you know, a marketing strategy that now takes advantage of all that. So making a business plan is something that is very important, because it also means that you need to define what your success is. Some people define success, especially in the case of community networks, in the fact that there are places that probably they did not have, like Josephine was talking about in Kibera, they just didn't have any connectivity. And by the fact that they have been able to connect, you know, a few tens centers that didn't have that connectivity, that is success to them, okay? Probably people in Umoja Lanet who did not understand how they could leverage connectivity now have that. Maybe you have more grandiose, you know, you want to make money. There are lots of people that want to do it for profit, but what does that mean in your unique case? There are people who want to reach thousands of users, whilst there are those people who want to be able to connect a few small communities and grow, you know, organically around there. So again, in terms of your growth plans, your success will define whether you will stick to a small area and make sure that it is working very optimally, that you have value, whilst other people would you know, rush to see, okay, are they growing more, you know, horizontally. So and this is some of the things that I thought that I would address, that a lot of people don't go with it from business planning mindset. And that's where you start to have a lot of pitfalls, because then if you don't have a plan, then how are you going to finance? Because the plan is in your head, you need to write it down. If it's not written down, then people might think that maybe you're just mad. Your organization structure should be able to support your business plan, because then it will take advantage of all the considerations that you at the end of any business plan, you always need to have a financial plan, and these are some of the you know, building blocks that you would typically have. So you're going to have what is called capital expenditure components, and you are going to have operational expenditure components. So providing connectivity is something that is an ongoing concern, and it's mostly we build networks for a long-term view in mind. If you look at some of, you know, the telecom companies, they talk even about 8-year, 10-year ROIs. Typically for WISPs that are for profit, I've seen that the ROIs being mentioned are something between 8 months, that is return on investment, 8 months to a year, sometimes slightly longer. But again, how you define success for you will determine how you will factor that into your financial plan. So the CapEx is the capital expenditure to get your network off the ground. Primarily, we get backhauling into a certain area from a service provider like KeNOG. Then you need to build your equipment from there. You probably need a tower, or you identify a uniquely placed building and then place your antennas there and your radios there. But you need other things around the infrastructure. You need cabinets, you need power, and not to forget that you need the manpower or the resources to do the installations. So all that falls into CapEx. And then there's the operational cost. So I have had experience of, some guys who came to me to ask me to assist them with building a WISP. And, I gave them some guidelines, but then they quickly realized that as much as they had some equipment, they had already, gone through all their funds, so they could not pay for running costs in terms of having bandwidth to their customers, and that becomes a huge problem. So energy is a big thing in Kenya. If you're building CNs, and maybe if with local knowledge for WISPs, if you can have community partnerships at a low level, you can talk to schools, churches, etc., and probably have a model whereby it's a bit give and take. Then some of these things can be offloaded. Spectrum is something that is limited. We operate primarily in the unlicensed spectrum, in the 5 gigahertz. But I see like these days, CAK, for example, has come up with innovative ways like doing county level spectrum that you can be able to get that is at a lesser cost. But again, so these are things that you need to consider if you need to do. And sometimes then you need to lease your backhauling capabilities. Maintenance needs to be taken care of in terms of the guys who will do the field visits to, for corrective actions, to realign links, to do network maintenance. You need some fault management capabilities in terms of network monitoring systems, and you need to consider network monitoring and billing systems, and you need to consider, for example, whether these are, you need to buy servers or probably take care of, take advantage of models now with the cloud, whereby you list them. So like for my case, I was able to list, and I just realized, okay, I don't need $3,000, $4,000. I just need to have maybe $100 or $150 every month over time. So if you have a financial plan, you can be able to make these decisions. Of course, you need to get space. You need to have your equipment somewhere. So these are all operational costs, and there's CapEx. So this, like, if you look at the left side, this is something that I do when I'm assisting people, help them to build what is their CapEx and what are, all the inputs that go into it, what is their operational costs, bandwidth, energy, teams to manage that. You probably need vehicles with running costs. And then there's the HR side, and that comes with its own, you have to think about things like tooling.
I'll rush you a little bit here. I'll give you 30 more seconds so that we roll on to the second session.
Yeah, I think, you just need to build the financial model that will be able to ensure success for you. Reporting, it's very critical. Net Promoter Score, it's good that you ask your customers. Once you've defined your customers, you need to ask them whether they would promote you or whether they are distracted. This is a measure of, experience. I think this is where WISPs need to be shining. You need to be at promoters stage. I think we can go into the pitfalls a little bit later, but it's good. I think I would just say stick to know what you want to achieve, and then have standards and processes to ensure that you're hitting the target. So yeah, thanks, Martha.
Excellent. Thank you for that presentation, Philip. I'm sure attendees the participants have been able to get a lot of information from the presentations that are a little extended that we earlier anticipated. So I hope you have reaped the benefit of those presentations and are making use of the Q&A section to post your questions and engage with the panel. For the panelists, I'd appreciate if you engage with the participants and respond to some of the questions. If you're with us, also, even if you're not asking questions, you may pick up a thing or two from this section. So just have a look and contribute to the discussion on that side. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move to the second question, to the second session, which is largely built from the questions that were posted from a survey that we posted to the KeNOG community 2 weeks ago. And I will just shoot randomly to the panelists. Panelists, please try to keep your answers as brief as possible, cutting it down to 30 seconds. After that, we'll just jump on to the next question, yeah? So the first question, I'll direct it to Martin, and Philip can also chip in, because the two of you have talked about WISPs, and the question of sustainability. Philip, you're talking of ROI within 8 months. You are in it to make money. It is not about social impact. You want to, there's a business to run behind that. How do you then drive the issue of relevance and sustainability with FTTH coming up, with LTE, with 4G that is already in place, with 5G then coming? How do you make sure that that business continues to sustain itself and is relevant to the market?
Yeah, so with all technologies are complementary, and I think it's not a means to an end. It's for us to look at what is most applicable to your unique and environment. I think that as WISPs, we need to be alert to the fact that we need to take disruption as the key driver. We need to exist like startups. So it's the fact that, okay, there's a new technology, it can fulfill the end goal in a cheap way, fast, and there's a lot of capacity. This is what you're going to take advantage of. So for me, I think that this is more of the focus rather than just sticking to it. But of course, there are other things like some of these technologies are too expensive to deploy, like LTE, 4G, etc. So we're just looking at the fact that there are opportunities where these guys are not going, and we're going to exploit them.
Okay, Maxine?
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Philip has said. Sustainability is key, especially if you're looking at your business from a commercial aspect. You need to keep your head above the water. Philip said that there are some ISPs out there who are charging internet at 1,000 shillings a month. I think from a professional point of view, I don't think such a fee is sustainable. But what I am trying to drive at is when you're considering your costs as opposed to your expenses, and what you want to achieve should be able to guide you onto how you're going to price your product. Please remember that the service that you're selling, we are in the service industry, right? We're not selling products here. The service that you're selling is what is paying you. So you do your math according to your expenditure, your operational costs, your investment, and most importantly, just when you do your simple mathematics, you should be able to consider, am I growing? Is this how fast I want to grow? And then you'll be able to make a decision. In relation to other competitive or competition technologies that are coming up, FTTH, LTE, 3G and 4G, as I said, again, you need to place yourself in an area where you will be able to at least survive until these guys come. But also, again, secondly, and it is something that I have also realized in the urban centers, customer service is key. We have actually uprooted fiber many times and installed our service, and that service is still working until today. We have been in areas where we were the incumbent, fiber came, and we saw nearly 70–80% of the guys refusing to leave simply because they are more comfortable working with us. They can reach us in the middle of the night. They can ask us all the questions they want. And instead of calling and talking to a machine that is attempting to understand what you're saying. So customer service is key. Make sure your face is out there. Your customer needs to feel comfortable around you. That way, you're going to maintain that customer despite fiber, despite 4G, and any other technology that might come into the future. So in relation to sustainability, it's very, very important that you position yourself in a manner that you're going to be able to also grow. Very important.
Okay. So what I'm getting from there is, so Philip is saying, stay woke, see what is coming, see how you can write that. Martin is saying, yes, it will come, but how good is your service? How have you served your clients to the point that they are so loyal to you, they will not move to the FTTH, they'll stay to what you're giving them because it is good. Right. Okay, and I think Martin, as you are sharing that, I think you also picked up a question that I was just about to raise with you about pricing your product. Yeah, and I think you've on a very high level just explained, it's a question of cost. But I'll just throw the same question to Irene and ask, when you shared with us the pricing that you have for the various services, if it is a month, how did you arrive at that? Or how and perhaps not even specific to Lanet, how can a community network arrive at its pricing and still, maintain the sustainability question? Irene, you're there?
Of course, for community networks, we are not out to make money. We are not a money-making organization, or the community network is not out to make money for profits. So, and of course, the other thing is you're connecting the unconnected. People who, they are having difficulties connecting to the mainstream service providers because of costs. So of course, we had to think around from, what the ISP is charging us. And then of course, what the community members can be able to afford. Because in this case, now we are looking at affordability. I mean, when you're connecting the unconnected, one main thing is affordability. They should be able to afford what do you call it, the bandwidth that you'll be providing to them. So those are some of the things, apart from looking at how much the ISP itself is charging us, and then of course what they can be able to afford in the ground. So we came up with those three categories, but we are still reviewing it. Looking at the uptake and the feedback from the community members themselves.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So away from the matters, away from costing of the services, maybe we can just go back to regulatory matters. Philip, what guidelines would you give as a consultant? What guidelines would you give on a very high level to a prospective client who wants to set up a WISP?
Okay, so Communications Authority is the body that is charged with this. And from a legal perspective, of course, you need to go through them to, at minimum, have an application service provider license. So that you can be able to offer internet resellership. Of course, there are other tiers and other levels, like network facilities providers with different tiers, depending at which level you're playing. So it's good for again, to go back to the idea is to define what is your market, what is the size of that market. And then with that, when you approach the regulator, you will know which license you need to take. You probably also be able to understand which business licenses from a legal perspective that you need to take. And also, if you're doing your technical research, then you will understand whether you'll operate on unlicensed frequency, whereby we all coexist, or most so on the licensed side, where you can go in and get some frequency licenses.
Okay. Thank you. Barak, what has been your experience around regulation for community networks, especially in your area? And maybe you can even tell us, of challenges how you've managed to deal with issues of interference on the networks that you're setting up. And if it is unlicensed, how you even arrived at that specific spectrum. I've spent too many questions, but I hope you've captured them.
Yes, I have, Michelle. Thank you for those questions. Quickly to respond to them. Most of us as community networks, we are operating using the ISM band. I think one of the previous speakers has mentioned that. As a country, let me say that we are growing, because if you can hear from all of us, starting with Martin, who was our first speaker, this is a journey that we have probably taken for the last 10 to 15 years, and we are still growing. So even from a regulatory standpoint, this is when, for instance, CA is working on regulations on the use of TV white spaces, but most of the community networks are operating using the ISM band. For those that may not know, the ISM band, the ISM means industrial, scientific, and medical. So for us as AHERI, we are a research institute. Over and above just the service that we are providing to communities, we are also doing a lot of research that we believe will be useful not only to the regulator, but also to equipment providers. So we are also involved we are currently engaging with the regulator, of course, together with our other colleagues from Lanet and Tunapanda. Slowly, the community networks is coming together as an alliance so that we can be able to articulate such issues. And I believe sooner or later, we should be able to have favorable licensing frameworks for those that are operating community networks. Let me say, Nairobi see Kenya, Kenya see Nairobi. Most of us, when we are in the village, we go offline simply because there is no network, because we seem to concentrate all our efforts within the capital cities. And this is one of the things that at AHERI, we are trying to debunk. With respect to the question on interference, let me say that within the rural areas, there is little interference in the ISM band, other than the 2.4 range. So most of us are using the 5.8 gigahertz range, especially for backhaul within the different community centers. And you'll notice that within our rural areas, the distances are not very large. So we are fairly able to operate without a lot of interference compared to other cities like Nairobi or Nakuru, where you have proliferation of radios all over the place. But I think the previous speaker has made an important point. As community networks, or even those that are running WISPs, I know there are many that are unlicensed. It's important we be part of communities like KeNOG, or part of alliances like the community network alliances, so that we can engage the regulator. The regulator is reasonable, let me put it that way. They are out to make sure that we connect the unconnected. And in most cases, for as long as they know where you're operating and how you're operating, they are willing and able to make concessions. So this is one of the things that we've been doing, but it's an area that is still developing. I hope I have responded to the question.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. And just so we've discussed on how what we are seeing going forward in terms of the frequencies to use, and maybe looking forward to use of TV white space. Still, when you're still discussing matters to do with community networks and saying that yes, Nairobi is Kenya, how can we make the rest of the country Nairobi? How can we sensitize more people in the community? We build more community networks. How do we encourage leadership to take this up and to endorse and maybe even to fund more community networks and bring everyone up? Maybe Irene, because I think you had mentioned about Chief Kariuki being one of the local champions. Maybe you can also just guide us and maybe provide recommendations of how we can move ahead as a country and sensitize the leadership.
For the Lanet Umoja Community Network, as I said, our champion is a chief, and this chief, we are made to understand, is in charge of all the rest of the chiefs. So what we've been doing is he's been trying to sell this idea to the rest of the chiefs, and time and again we've had requests from the chiefs from various localities wanting to implement the same. So, and then the other thing is also, having workshops to sensitize the public on this so that people can be able to know and learn about community networks. Currently, there's an African forum that has been ongoing for some time. But we're also trying to come up with a Kenyan community network forum that people can be able to come in and talk about community networks, so that probably this can reach far up. And I think we'll share the link at the end of it, so that probably those who would be interested in signing up can be able to sign up into the group, the Kenyan, as we are trying to lay ground to make it official, or rather as an official forum for Kenyan community networks.
Okay, okay. So just to articulate that again to the participants, there is a WhatsApp group that has been formed. I can see Irene is in there, Barak is in there, and the agenda is to drive community networks forward and increase the number of community networks that we have in the country, see how to pull the capabilities and advocate for growth, and probably lobby for policy that supports this agenda. Let me just give me a minute. I'm having a bit of a technological challenge. To the panelists, and I think everyone can just come in. I think as an upcoming community, it may not be very clear what becomes a legal connection, what is an illegal connection, especially in the WISP arena. Maybe Martin, Philip, and every other panelist, maybe you can just give ideas of what would be an illegal connection and pitfalls that generally anyone who wants to get into this space should avoid. I would start with Martin, because I think I'd mentioned your name first, and then everyone can chip in.
Right. So in matters legality, there are I would specify into to two sections. The first one is, of course, government, and we have mentioned that. It is paramount that you get licensed. You have your taxes and your licenses in place. Usually, because a lot of people use free spectrum, the 2 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz is free spectrum. It creates a little bit of a gray area where, you know, the general assumption is that because I'm using a free frequency, then I'm not, you know, supposed to pay anything, right? But what you need to know is that if you are in the business of selling internet, and that goes even to the community-based networks, it's important that you are known at the Communications Authority of Kenya. And in the event that you decide you're going to have a run on without, you know, accessing government licenses, it's okay. But in the event that they catch up with you, then you will have a case to answer, you will pay for fines, and you'll get into problems that you might, you know, at that time, maybe your business has grown and you're big, and then all of a sudden you're in problems with the authorities. So it's something to avoid. The other one is technical. There are people who, again, I have mentioned free frequencies. There are people who tend to infringe on licensed frequencies. Now, this is very dangerous, not just in Kenya, but in any country. Because if a big telco has bought a big chunk of a licensed frequency, say 6 gigahertz, although 6 gigahertz is becoming license free, and I would talk about that in another forum. If you infringe on, for example, the LTE frequency that is expensive, is about, I think it's 2 gigahertz to 2.3, if I'm not sure. And then of course, the owner of the frequency catches up with you and you start creating interference for them. That is 100% illegal. You'll get arrested. You will pay a lot of money, depending on the cost of that frequency. There are people who go to 6 gigahertz, moving forward to 7 gig. I have had some people getting arrested because of doing that, and that's illegal. Don't do it. And then, of course, is the general civil illegalities of stealing people's things. And, you know, a question has been asked about vandalism. If you come to my base station and you step on my dish, and, you know, you'll get arrested for that. So there's a lot of discipline to be that is required in this industry. And then, of course, you need to be in line with the government. Make sure your licenses are good enough. Even if they knock on your door and ask, are you an ISP? Yes. Are you licensed? Yes. Let us see the paperwork. Here you are. Great. Have a nice day. Instead of being put into a police vehicle and going to answer a case. Also, just to finish, there are people who have been arrested vandalizing fiber cables. And I have seen, you know, I have had cases where WISPs are busy cutting fiber cables from other service providers. That is illegal. Don't do that. You'll get arrested and you'll be in trouble.
All right. Thank you, Martin. Who's next? Let's see. Josephine, you'd like to go next? Okay, seems like Josephine is not ready. Barak, Philip?
Yes, I would like to,
to
respond to a few things.
Okay.
I think my colleagues have given holistic responses to a lot of the issues. But also, let me say that a few lessons that we have learned is one, the people are important, or communities, understanding the community that you're working in. Let's not just deploy technology for the sake of technology, but technology that answers to the needs of the communities where people are in. So, for example, in our case, we have realized that many students really needed, or children needed, to access Zoom classes. And so our idea was timely in that it enabled children who are hitherto sitting at home and could not access an affordable connection to be able to be connected. The second thing is the urban and the rural areas have different spending powers. And I think it's important to take that into recognition. And even as community networks, in as much as we are doing it to serve the community, we have the same challenge. We have to pay bills, just like the traditional WISPs. And so at the end of the day, we have to work on models that make sure we pay our bills. The other thing is that technology is key. One of the lessons we've learned is work with technology that has support locally. The second thing is we are an area that has a lot of rain and rainstorms, and different technology behaves differently depending on the environment you're operating in, from what we have seen. And we've benefited a lot from being part of communities like KeNOG, where we are able to share ideas and experiences, because when you have interesting weather or a storm, it means you have to operate within certain frequencies. And as Martin has just said, you don't want to start stealing somebody's frequency, yet you started off in the ISM band. You can get into a lot of trouble. So what that means is knowledge is important. So for us as an organization, continuous training is something that we are learning or adapting to, and training, whether in in the network management issues or training in business skills that are necessary to operate the wireless ISP. And also engaging with other stakeholders is important, because that is how you engage with the regulator. We are a growing nation on the technology space, and specifically on this wireless area. And technology always goes ahead of regulation. And so even as we go ahead of regulation, which we are known for as Kenyans, we need to make sure that we are working with the regulator in one way or the other to make sure that we are on the right place. Finally, as I would say, like in the area we operate in, we are prone to thunderstorms and lightning and the likes. So you'll find that most of the buildings are not internet ready or are not prepared. So one of the things we are doing is everywhere we go, we have to make buildings internet ready. And I believe we are preparing the society for the future Kenya, which will be a smart Kenya, by preparing the buildings. And also we are doing a lot of education, digital literacy. You find that most people ask, why should I connect, especially in areas that are not served or underserved? So you have to go there and educate them the benefits of having the internet for them to be able to renew the link at the end of the month. So I think just beyond connecting, we are doing a lot of work educating the masses in the rural areas, and even creating employment, because as we move into communities, we have to train people that will provide IT support, basics like configuring routers, continuous maintenance, helping homes to install or to purchase computers and the likes. So that's the other important aspect that we are doing as community networks. Thank you, Martha.
All right, okay. So Philip, I'll give you the last 30 seconds, strictly 30 seconds, just to add on the pitfalls.
In terms of legality, it's all about being a good neighbor, especially in the unlicensed frequency. I would say a lot of people don't operate within the power levels. So guys just put, high powers that they achieve the highest capacity. This doesn't work, as has been mentioned, I think, on the platform at some time. And then the other thing is, I think people need to be careful. People have been encroaching on KPLC poles. I think that that's something that they're moving in. Yes, but also just be careful who you deal with in terms of supply of equipment. Make sure it's coming from the right places.
Okay, all right. I can see we are really out of time. Second session, we have drastically reduced it to be able to at least cover some of the key questions that had been asked, and some of them had been featured in the panelists' presentations in the first section. Unfortunately, it does not look like we will have our third section, but I am glad that the panelists have been engaging with the participants. I'll pick two questions that I've seen popping and are still not answered, and then we will move to close the session. Thank you so much for being with us, almost 2 hours on, and thank you for the engagement. I can see it's a topic that there's a lot of interest in, and we may have to probably consider if we would extend this session. do an extension of this topic in future. So there is a question I am seeing here. What are some of the pointers you can give in regards to leasing dark fiber that should be put into consideration, especially when negotiating, and what price set should be considered reasonable for leasing dark fiber? I presume that this question, it's going to Martin and Philip, and it would be around WISPing. So maybe Martin, you can take it first, or Philip, whoever is ready.
With regards to leasing of dark fiber, again, it depends on availability. This is the first thing you have to consider. Where do you want to offer the service? And do you have those options there? And then, of course, secondly, it has to be cost. Again, there's a trade-off between cost and performance and all those things. There's a sweet spot. So you might find that, leasing fiber all the way from Nairobi to somewhere in Kisumu might be a very difficult thing. So maybe you'll go for someone who drops it maybe at the county level, and then maybe you'll do a last mile wireless. So for me, those are the considerations. First, is it available? And then secondly, how do you complement the technologies so that you're able to offer, I would say, the best of both worlds. Yeah, but again, in Kenya, we have very few guys offering dark fiber. So.
Okay. Martin, any thoughts to add on?
Not really. You have to be very near where the dark fiber is located, even for it to make sense for you to acquire. Kenya Power is actively engaging us day by day regarding to this service. So if you're near a Kenya Power substation anywhere in the country, I'm sure in maybe a year or in the years to come, in a few years to come, the service will be available in majority of those substations for Kenya Power. It's something to look out for. Otherwise, other service providers who do not necessarily have NOCs around the country, it becomes complicated because you don't know where they are. If there's liquid in Nakuru, if there's somebody else in Kisumu, you don't know where to locate them. But location is key. Location is key.
Okay. All right. Just one note for Barak. You had mentioned some planning tools, radio frequency planning tools. Please share this. I think it would be useful to everyone on the group. There's a question on a community network WhatsApp group, which Irene had mentioned. We'll share the link of, we'll share the invite link, and you can join in to the conversation. Okay, I think most of the other questions have been tackled. So what we will do is we will continue with this conversation on the KeNOG WhatsApp group, which I know it's full at the moment, but we also have some good news. Yes, that group is full, but now we have a mailing list, which we'll share the link. Please subscribe to this mailing list, and we can grow the community, and we can be able to have more enriching conversations. And we will see where we take it from there. Yeah, so I would like to close this session, seeing that we are 2 hours into the webinar, which was initially 90 minutes, but the conversations were so engaging and the questions were coming quick. So it would probably not have been a good idea to wrap it up as fast. The session is recorded, and you will be able to, we will share the link, and you'll also see the link on our website for further reference. The presentations will also be available for anyone who wants to read through. The panelists will also share their contacts so that you can engage with them if you would want more information, if you want to see the kind of models that they have, and maybe if you want some hand holding as you set up your WISP or you set up your community network. Allow me to say thank you to the attendees for your very active participation and for keeping the panelists on their feet with the questions and making them at least go a little bit overboard over what they have presented. And I'm glad that they were up to the task. I'd like to thank the KeNOG Program Committee for supporting this process. We have been engaging for a month just to see how to make it right and to make it valuable and useful. And I'm glad that we've been able to pull it off. So with that, I would want to hand over the session and say, let's carry on chat, and please remember to subscribe to the mailing list. We will share that link shortly. Thank you so much. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks, everyone, for your time. So we've created a mailing list. You can join the mailing list, and we'll send more information about how you can find the recording. Thanks again to our moderator, Martha, and all the panelists, and we look forward to engaging with you online.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.